Yep.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed plan of condominium and zoning bylaw amendment respecting 279 Hill Street in the municipality of Central Elgin. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none. What method of notice and when was notice given to the public for this meeting?
Madam Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on October the 14th, 2022. Notice was posted to the property, notice was posted to the municipal website, and notice was displayed in the weekly C-Buzz advertisements.
Thank you. I'm going to now introduce our planner, Lou Pompili. He's going to present the proposed plan of condominium and the zoning bylaw amendment. Welcome, Lou. It's your first time here with Central Elgin, so we welcome you. Go ahead and present the plan of condominium, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and to all you councillors present today and the members of the public. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to ask Mr. Perrin if he could share his screen. I know I'm having difficulty here right now with sharing my screen, and then we'll go through the slides. But as he's doing that, I'll just give a brief introduction. My name is Lou Pompili. I'm the director of the Planning and Building Services for St. Thomas and the Central Elgin Planning Office. I'm filling in this evening for Kevin McClure and Jim McComb, who unfortunately weren't able to attend tonight's meeting. And as you said in your introduction there, tonight's the meeting, the public meeting tonight is to hear comments from the public with regards to a draft plan of condominium for a vacant land condo and an associated zoning bylaw amendment. Mr. Perrin, are you able to share your screen?
I am just.
Yes.
Yep. I apologize. I'm having difficulty here too. So. Well, that's the consultant's presentation.
Yeah, I understand. Just
yep,
one second.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Your Worship, I'll just ask, are you able to hear me okay? Am I coming across clearly?
Yes, you are. I just muted it waiting for Mr. Perrin. There he's found it.
Okay, not a problem. All right. Thank you, Mr. Perrin. And if we could move to the second slide, I'll just give a brief intro of the site as we get onto the second slide there. But as you said, this is to hear comments from the public for a draft plan of condominium for a vacant land condo, and also the associated zoning bylaw amendment with that. The subject site is 279 Hill Street. It's located on the north side of Hill Street, west of Beamsby Street, within the community of Port Stanley. So right now, the use of the subject site and its surroundings area are predominantly residential. A small portion of the southwest corner of the site is designated natural heritage, and there are natural heritage lands adjacent to this site to the west. Yes, that's perfect. So as far as the draft plan of condominium, it is for a vacant land condo in the form of townhouse units. The overall site is 0.81 hectares in size, and there are 27 townhouse units proposed in a vacant land condo form. 0.83 hectares of the site will be within common elements. So that includes areas used for driveways, the access lanes, landscaped areas, and the natural heritage area in the southwest will also be within the common element. 0.421 hectares of the area is what will be comprised of the vacant land condo itself. So the next slide, please. This is a copy of the draft plan of vacant land condo, which shows the 27 units that have an east-west orientation. The access and driveway servicing the units will run north-south along the eastern portion of the site. The condo plan also includes visitor parking areas. I believe there's up to 10 proposed. It'll include landscaped areas and easements offering to assist with for the residents of these units to access their individual units. Next slide, please. As far as a draft zoning bylaw amendment that's before council and the subject of this application tonight, the rezoning application is to rezone the lands from its current zone of open space 2 and rezone that to a site-specific residential R1-87 zone. You go to the next slide, we'll show you what the draft zoning bylaw amendment will look like. So these lands are within Port Stanley. However, the zone regulations that apply to them are within the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw number 1998. And there's two parts to the draft amendment. The first part involves bylaw 1998 is amended by adding to section 3, which is the zoning maps and schedules, which shall further be known as map 9 subsection AP to bylaw 1998 as amendment. And the second part is that bylaw 1998 is further amended by designating the subject lands on Schedule A as an R1-87, and the provisions of the subsection 9.2.1 to the bylaw 1998 as amended shall apply to these lands, subject to the provisions of section 3 of the bylaw. And this is a draft copy of an illustration of the draft map and schedule change being sought and just described. And this also is a further draft amendment to bylaw 1998, which includes some of the following regulations. So it will define what that area is within the zoning bylaw where the R1-7 will apply. R1-87 would apply. It'll outline what the permitted uses are. In this case, it's townhouse dwellings. It'll outline some of the accessory structures that are permitted, what the minimum lot area would be, and minimum frontage, 35 meters. Next slide, please. Yeah. The bylaw amendment further will maximize the number of dwelling units for this site at 27 and limit the height to 2 stories. And also include a provision for 5.5 meters for accessory buildings. The coverage, the maximum coverage would be 66%, and the minimum front yard setback is set at 9 meters. Side yards for the westerly limits is 6 meters, and the easterly limits is 17 meters. And also the minimum rear yard setback here is set at 2 meters. Next slide, please, which I believe is the final one for this specific amendment. Includes minimum parking requirements at 64 spaces and includes details there on the parking space dimensions for both the ones that are being proposed as parallel to the drive and perpendicular to the drive lane. The provision also includes what the permitted setbacks are for decks within the units, and that being that the decks are limited to minimum of notwithstanding the provisions of the current subsection, a deck may be located 1 meter from the westerly lot line. And there's also an exception clause that's included. So this This is a copy of the draft bylaw that will be going before council in a future date. Next slide, please. And the final slide just again is a further copy of the draft bylaw as being amended. That's a presentation that I have for you this evening, Your Worship. And if there's any, I'll be available to answer any questions as best I can. And staff will be bringing forward a report at a future date that will include the comments that are heard this evening and ones that have been mailed in as part of this application. And yeah, that's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lou. I appreciate that. And we're going to now introduce Darren Lyle and Casey, and I'm sorry, but Kulchiki, not certain of his last name. They're agents for the applicant. They're going to provide a brief presentation as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Casey Kulchicki. You nailed it. There are a few that get that when they see it, so thank you. I am the planner from Zelenka Preem Limited, representing Morgan Pavia on this project. I am joined by Darren Lyle, our engineer on this project as well, and Morgan has also joined us tonight in case there's any questions that he may be able to answer. We did provide just a few slides that I will pull up here. Hoping that everybody can see that. So for this project, we've been working with staff extensively for coming up to almost 2 years now when we first proposed our original site plan for this project. Through several back and forth meetings, we've been able to kind of refine the project to what is before you tonight for public comments. We've carried out several studies with regards to the proposed development, including traffic, functional servicing, natural heritage, planning justification, to support the proposed applications before you. Some of the outcomes of those meetings with regards to the natural heritage, we took an issue scoping report that found that the adjacent natural heritage would not be adversely impacted by the proposed development. We've also refined that to provide a compensation formula for any tree removals. Any tree removals will be compensated for through the site plan approval process. With regards to the natural heritage feature at the front of the property, as Mr. Pompili noted in his presentation, there is a small portion that is designated natural heritage that is to remain as such. It is not included as part of our developable area. With regards to the traffic report, again, our traffic consultant found that Hill Street would continue to operate as it's designed for, and that there would be no adverse impacts to the amount of vehicles being proposed as a result of this development. Through the public consultation period with regards to the proposal, we heard of concerns with regards to the cost of infrastructure upgrades. I'll let Darren speak to the capacity of the infrastructure systems, but just for council's information, any upgrades required to the existing municipal infrastructure is borne by the applicant, not the municipality. So it's not funded by the taxpayers in any way. We heard some questions with regards to the compatibility and the character of this development. Speaking from 14 years of experience, we do find that townhouses typically interface with single detached developments, particularly with regards to infill and intensification projects of this nature. We took that under consideration when we were designing the layout. We wanted to ensure that the private amenity spaces of both the new proposed dwellings as well as the existing dwellings along Bemis Street would not face each other, and that there would be minimal overlook concerns from the proposed dwellings by separating them using the commonly used driveway. We've also made sure to incorporate a 4-meter wide landscape strip along the easterly property line to allow for potential tree retention as well as new tree plantings. And through the site plan process, we are expecting that a constructed board-on-board fence along that property line would further screen and buffer the proposed development from those existing private amenity areas. At this point, I'll pass it over to Darren as he can speak to some of the engineering comments that have kind of arisen through the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Casey, for the introduction. So I won't take up too much of everybody's time, but as with any infill project, servicing utilization of existing services is always a hot topic. So kind of just to build off of what we have presented in our servicing report that was submitted with the draft plan application, we just wanted to kind of hit a couple of the highlights to make sure that everybody's aware of the servicing solution and the impacts that it has or lack thereof on the surrounding community. So starting with sanitary sewage, so this was a bit of a hill to get over, as many are aware, many years ago for the municipality. But in 2015, when Don West advanced Sunset Bluff subdivision and the sanitary sewer was extended up Sunset Road, that sewer was kind of master planned for this area of Port Stanley, and the development of this site was contemplated at that time. So the existing infrastructure, initially advanced by Don West and more recently extended by the Landing subdivision, kitty corner to this site, was designed with existing depth and capacity to service this subject lands. Water main, there's an existing water main on Hill Street. It's a 10-inch water main and has sufficient capacity and pressure to service the 27 units that are proposed here. Storm drainage and stormwater management. As with many infill designs, the grading and storm drainage for the site will be designed to be self-contained with a series of swales, catch basins, and storm sewers that will ensure that there isn't any negative impact on the surrounding residences. That storm sewer system will collect to an internal stormwater management system that will provide quantity and quality control to pre-development levels. And then will discharge to the existing ravine on Hill Street, which ultimately goes to the Stephen Morgan drain and eventually Kettle Creek. Again, that storm sewer system will be, or stormwater management system ensures that the flows are of equal or better than what's going to that existing outlet right now. So there won't be any negative impacts on the surrounding ecosystems and ecological communities. As part of that storm sewer system, there will be some improvements done to the east end of the existing Hill Street ravine. There is some minor areas of erosion noted there. So as we construct the outlet that discharges to that ravine, we will fix any deficient conditions that are in there right now. Access to the site, as Casey kind of already touched on with the internal layout, the property is conducive to a single loaded street only. So we've ensured that the access will be constructed all to municipal standards and Ontario Building Code standards with sufficient internal turning radiuses and lane widths and everything, not only for emergency vehicle access, but also will be comfortable for the residents to drive in and also for garbage collection and things of that nature. Those are kind of the highlights of the servicing considerations. Anyway, if there's any more detailed questions, certainly we'll remain around to answer anything. So thank you very much, everybody. And that's the conclusion of our presentation.
Very much, Casey and Darren. Have we received any written submissions on this proposal?
Madam Mayor, correspondence has been received from the following. Hydro One has indicated no concerns. Correspondence has been received from Wesley and Kimberly Dorr, Hill Street, stating concerns that neighborhood will be negatively impacted by this development. The email correspondence notes additional concerns with protected natural heritage lands, destruction of trees, who owns a portion of the ravine that is being given up, who pays for drainage, sewage, and other necessary infrastructure, financial impacts of development on the municipality, safety and traffic concerns. Correspondence has been received from Galen Sini, Hill Street, voicing concern with traffic disturbance. Increased traffic places demands on infrastructure. Is there adequate water and sewer infrastructure? And who will pay for the upgrades? Community safety. Can fire, EMS, and police provide adequate protection for the additional and existing development? Destruction of habitat, fragmentation of plant and animal populations, impacts to air quality and human health. Third correspondence has been received from Richard and Andrea Grueners, 386 Bemis Street, stating concerns with natural heritage, natural hazard lands, available infrastructure, filling in of the ravine, removal of trees, and changing water flow and drainage will be an impact on the area. Condominiums do not fit in with the character of the surrounding area and do not meet the affordable housing needs of the area. Safety is an issue with the added traffic to an already built up area. These emails were sent to members of council, planning, and municipal staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before opening this meeting, I would say if you're listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. If you have called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. At this time, I ask that all participants be respectful to members of council and municipal staff as you ask your questions. Those choosing to be disrespectful will be ejected from the meeting. I am now going to open this meeting to the public, and Mr. Perrin will admit you to speak, and we will we'll go in the order that you're admitted. So I see the first one is Andrea and Richard, I assume.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you. If you would like to go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Martin, and I appreciate the time. I have a bit of a statement, actually, more than a question. I think it refers to many of the comments that were just made in the presentations.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rick, if you could just state your full name and address before you begin. Thank you.
I got a little excited, no worries. So my name is Richard Gruner, 386 Bemis Street, backing onto the property here at off of Hill Street, and I live in Port Stanley. So, and thanks for the time tonight to discuss this proposed development that borders the backyards of many living on Bemis Street. I'd like to thank a couple of the new council that came out to visit and connected to see firsthand the impacts of that this development will have on the area. The term NIMBY is an acronym, not in my backyard, and it's probably being used by many of you right now that are, and many of us, to describe many of us that are on the call today. This is literally in my backyard. Contrary to what the planning department and council may believe, I'm not against development or change. However, I am against unnecessary development that negatively impacts more than it benefits. I'm against development that will have a negative environmental impact, both short and long term. I'm against development that's not part of the plan and require major modifications and changes to laws, bylaws, zoning in order for it to happen. I'm against development that does not address the needs of the area and misinterpret rules and policies that are in place. I'm against development that is being pushed through just for the sake of development. I'm against development that has no regard for those living in the area, and against developing an unneighborly design that would negatively impact the quality of life, property values, and not encourage a sense of place. I chuckle at that term. That's the term that's used often in the official plan. A sense of place is a unique collection of qualities and characteristics, visual, cultural, social, and environmental, that provide a meaning to a location. Sense of place is what makes one city, or in this instance, a hamlet and a small lake town, different from another. But sense of place is also what makes our physical surroundings worth caring about. The people of Central Elgin, and specifically Port Stanley in this instance, care a lot about their surroundings. Many bought here over the last few years for the beauty, the surrounding natural lands, the quiet that this little hamlet provides. I understand there's no accountability for realtors who advertise green space and valley views. However, there is accountability to the municipality and the city planners when those who did their due diligence, like myself, in investigating the land's current zoning and bylaws, were told they would never allow such building to occur on such a small area of land, so close to natural heritage and natural hazard zoning. Knowing that zoning and bylaws were in place to protect this valley, we took comfort in our decision to purchase. Now is the time for council to stand up and do their due diligence expected by the residents of Central Elgin. It was disheartening to see how quickly the vote took place on September the 26th. No questions, no concerns, no interest, just vote yes and move on. We're seeing a lot of development and growth in Port Stanley. However, it's disappointing to see when a new development is obtaining approvals and amendments without any consideration of the people living here. Some key points I'd like to highlight from the emails I sent over the last month and a half. Zoning bylaw number 1998. This should have stopped dead in its tracks there. The current zoning would not allow for the proposed development. There is no benefit to the neighborhood or the township or the province to make this bylaw amendment. The application document admits that this would be a more intensive form of development than existing low density residential neighborhood. This goes against the overall character of the surrounding area. The two-story homes proposed are not in character with the area or in any way similar to the Domus development that is referenced in the proposal. Section B2.6, this is not, and I'm using air quotes, logical extension to the existing built-up area. Criterion 4.4.2 refers again to housing being compatible in scale with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. Have I mentioned a 27-unit, two-story townhome is not in character with the neighborhood? There are known and unknown environmental impacts that will occur from developing on natural heritage and natural hazard land, including the impact on wildlife, deer paths, migratory birds, natural water flow, light and air pollution, etc. Financial burden to the township. It will actually cost the province and municipality more in services than what is being brought in for tax base. This is a quote brought forth by Mayor Sally Martin. There are provincial reports that planners and council reports are in support of the development for the proposed 279 Hill Street. The More Homes for Everyone provincial policy statement and the latest legislation that the provincial government is looking to push through, Bill 23. I hear a lot of what we can't do. It's interesting how these reports and documents are being interpreted for the benefit of this development and not used to defend the lands in question and support the residents of Central Elgin. The spirit of Bill 23 in the provincial policy statement is to build proper housing and fulfill the need for an area and to limit the amount of hurdles to expedite these processes to fulfill a need. That's bolded and underlined. Is not in place to build for the sake of building, only for the profit of the developer. The planning justification report provided by the developer have some interesting interpretations, or shall I say possibly maybe misinterpretations of the provincial policy statement. Lands are presently designated natural heritage and natural hazard lands. Removal of trees and developing in these natural areas will have a negative impact on the environment from pollution, both air and light, runoff, erosion of the valley, and heat intensification from the asphalt parking and shingles. They're proposing filling a significant portion of the valley at the entrance of the development. This will have a major impact on the drainage for the area and the unknown impacts up and downstream once this is restructured. The fill required for the area could be up to 12 meters in height. Also, many trees and much of the land leading to the valley will need to be disturbed or removed. The infill in this area will ultimately have major and detrimental consequences to the neighbors that border the property directly to the east. In regards to filling in the valley at the entrance of 279 Hill Street to allow for the increased traffic flow, according to the survey that we were provided and municipal mapping applications that we could access, it is apparent that much of this land, if not all, is part of the road allowance for Central Elgin, and the developer would need to be given permission, ownership to significantly alter the natural lands in question and also the roadway that exists. Is this something that Central Elgin has already agreed to or prepared to do? Safety is an issue with the added traffic to an already built up area. The impacts of the added traffic congestion from the current construction, which is still to be finished, also the planned construction of the water tower area, still to be determined, will increase traffic flow immensely to the area. A new development with only one way in and one way out is a very large safety concern for a quiet residential street. Traffic studies referred to are based on a 2019 study from what I can understand. And that was before the Dumas construction had begun and the water tower hasn't even started yet and doesn't take into specific account the 54 extra cars. And I just hear now 67 parking spaces maybe coming in and out of that small entrance on 279 Hill Street. And I got that from the 2019 proposal was from the letters that were offered earlier. Presenting the area, presently the area surrounding the proposed area are on a private septic, and the grading, etc. of the new build will undoubtedly have a negative impact on the properties that neighbor the development to the east. Policy 2.1.1, natural features in areas shall be protected for the long term. I could probably stop there again. This speaks for itself. Filling in a ravine, removal of trees, changing water flow, drainage, those all have severe environmental impacts. Presently, the Domus construction is not yet done, and there are 34 acres by the water tower and by the school that are slated for development in the near future within Port Stanley. According to existing council, these are the only areas in Port Stanley that will see new developments. This housing will adequately fill and reflect the needs for infill and multi-style buildings. The official plan also is set in place to ensure that the needs of Central Elgin are met. The need, bolded and underlined, for this development and the change of zoning and bylaws is unnecessary and does not need to be approved to achieve any standards set up by the provincial government. The official plan of Central Elgin is set, and this area is not part of that plan. The housing currently planned in the area already meets and possibly even exceeds the intensification redevelopment goals for the area for the next 20 years. The interpretation that this development is desired in the area, that's also shown, shows a lack of connection to the surroundings and the township of Central Elgin, and a complete misinterpretation of the provincial policy statement. The proposed development at 279 Hill Street does not encourage active transportation or trip reduction. Two-story condominiums with no yard will only market to young professionals, investment properties, rentals, and Airbnbs. Those who do live here will need to leave town in order to get to their place of work. This will add to all pollution, will not be an environmentally friendly addition to the area. Infill is meant to be used close to transit hubs, etc., to encourage workers to use public transit, not in a small area down by the lake. According to the provincial policy statement, it should be illustrated that there is a need for such an amendment to pass for a new development. Presently, there are 2 large areas of development planned for Port Stanley, and this added 27-unit site is not needed to achieve the current plans that are in place for Central Elgin, their official plan, or any provincial mandates. Amendments to the plan, zoning, and bylaws to accommodate proposal come at a dramatic cost to municipality and in turn the taxpayers. The conceptual design of the townhomes are not in character with anything in the area and do not reflect any of the needs of the current or future residents in Port Stanley. The roads leading up to it and entering the proposed site do not support such an increased load of traffic, and there is no current data to prove what is stated as being, quote, demonstrated. The site in question has conservation, natural heritage, natural hazard land designations. The current zoning and bylaws do not allow for such a dramatic change in the current landscape. It does not support building of this proposed development. There have been a lot of liberties taken with interpretations when it comes to the development plan to make it, quote, seem like a viable decision for this parcel of land. When looking at the hard facts, the provincial policy statement in detail, there is some doubt, some clear doubt when it comes to the viability, compliance, and even legality of building a new 27 new home development on these protected lands based on current bylaws and zoning. Provincial policy statement is clear that development in rural areas be part of the municipal plan, fit in with the area that is surrounding, and all other areas are looked at first, have existing infrastructure, maintain natural heritage and natural hazard lands, avoid development which may cause environmental or public health or safety concerns. This proposed development is not able to check yes to any of that criteria. The proposed development does remain in the traditional character, remain in the traditional character of the settlement area and does not enhance the community. It's admitted in the developer's report that the townhomes are not in scale with the surrounding area and are of higher density than recommended. The conclusion that the 27 two-story townhomes are desirable and compatible illustrates again the broad use of interpretation when it comes to this development and how out of touch the developer is to the area and the neighborhood. The addition of this type of residential development in this small parcel of land that is being proposed will have a negative impact on the neighborhood and surrounding area. The only one who benefits from this proposal is the developer. Thanks for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Richard. I just wanted to make a couple of statements on the things you said when you quoted me as saying that residential development won't pay for the infrastructure in the future. Yes, it will. It doesn't make the taxes from residential development break even. They don't give us extra taxes for other things. They just pay for themselves. That was what I had said to you. And we didn't ask a lot of questions at the previous meeting because this is the meeting where we hear people's concerns. And the new council will obviously be getting a report from our planner who will be responding to all your concerns and whether, you know, if they are valid concerns. And then the new council will be able to ask the questions and determine what is going to happen. So just clarifying those points. Thank you very much. Mr. Perrin, I'm sorry, Mr. Pompili, if you wish to speak at any point and respond to anything, just let me know, put your hand up and we'll call on you. Thank you. The next person on the screen is Perry. If you'd state your full name and address, please, and go ahead.
Perry Vendongen, 378 Bemis Street. I'll be right behind the proposed construction. I was obviously concerned with the environmental impact study that is not even listed anywhere. I don't see it. I see a mineral one, but not an environmental one. Nowhere in there does it say that you're going to have to clear 100 to 150 feet of that bush behind those residences, because those trees fall in that lot all the time. So those big trees are going to smash that development. Nowhere in there does it say anything about how much you're going to have to destroy back there. I have videos of all the birds that migrate through this area, blue jays, 50, 60 at a time. They're in my backyard flying around. All those trees will be gone. It's a migratory route for the birds to go through, the owls, the hawks, and everything else. And that is a big part right there where they go. I have all kinds of videos. The deer, I don't have a fence in my backyard specifically because the deer are always in my backyard. 8, 7, 8. In fact, yesterday, 2 doors down, they clear little fences, and there was a buck and a doe in the backyard just feeding off of some plants or in the backyard of the neighbor's place there. That'll all be gone. There will be no habitat for those anymore, because you're not mentioning that they'll have to clear that bush way back. It isn't just build it up to that bush line. Those trees will come down on that development. You have that in your proposal? I don't see that anywhere either. It's not just where you're entering the place, it's the whole length of those big majestic trees that are going to all have to be knocked down. Because I certainly wouldn't want to be the insurance company to cover all the trees falling on places that have a 6-foot backyard. Anyways, I think I've said my piece because Richard, I think, said it all. And I'd like to mention to Mr. Lyle there, quit smirking. You're seen on the screen here. When Richard was talking,
Excuse me, that's not polite.
all the time. Well,
That is
that's
not
rude.
You can't say those things, sir. We asked you to be respectful of everyone. Casey or Devin, do either one of you want to say anything about some of the comments that were made there, or are you just going to wait to fill in for the report?
Through you, your worship, we'll withhold any comments until all the public has spoken, if that's all right.
Certainly. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dave. If you'd state your full name and address, then go ahead. You need to unmute yourself, Dave.
Thank you. Dave Marr, 346 High Street. So this is not in my backyard, just close. There's a couple of things that I'd like to address. A lot of the things that Richard has said, I agree with. It does not meet the affordability housing policy of the county, which is stipulated in Mr. McClure's report, which was dated September 26, that it does not meet that, which I believe it should. I don't like the idea of 2 stories. It would be far more acceptable if it was a 1-story development. This way, you're not going to have people with 2 stories looking down into everyone's backyard. Now, having put that aside, it's also the design of the entranceway. It's right on a curve. Okay, if you take a look at that. So the entrance will be on a curve. The entrance will have to be widened to 66 feet, I understand, a standard roadway, so to allow 2 vehicles in and out. What you do on the inside of the condominium, I understand, is strictly your right to have whatever width you want, but you're going to require 66 feet, is my understanding, to have an entrance in. And that would be on the municipal land, which you are going to require to have in order to have this condominium. That driveway is approximately 2 feet away from another driveway, an existing driveway. And that could cause some interference there. A person in that particular driveway, if they are backing out, they're going to be somewhat blind. It's already bad enough with that curve, but they're going to be have trouble seeing people coming in and out of that development. So I have an issue with that. And yes, I know that you can backfill that ravine and so on. An engineer once told me you can do anything, it's just how much you want to spend. But in this particular case, what you're doing to that ravine is going to be quite drastic, really, in order to get that entranceway put in. Okay. The other thing with the size of the development, you mentioned 10 extra parking spaces. There's 5 parking spots that are being designated right along the fence line, right after you enter the condominium site. 5 parallel parking sites, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it looked like on the diagram. Those 5 sites are going to be right up against the existing house and garage of the existing owner right beside that. I don't like that particular aspect of it. You've got 27 lots, and you put the other excess parking more or less at the end of your condominium. Why could you not, if this actually goes through, and quite frankly, I hope it doesn't, but if it was to go through, knock it back by 1 or 2 of those lots, take those 5 parallel parking spots and put it with the rest of the excess parking, so that you don't have this parking right up against someone else's house. We're talking just a matter of a few feet where these 5 cars could potentially park. I think that's totally inappropriate to have it like that. Your traffic study, if it was indeed, the last one was 2019, is outdated. A lot has happened there in the last 3 years. And I believe the municipality should ask you to have an updated traffic study, because 2019 is not indicative of what's there now. As far as Hill Street goes, I believe, yes, the Hill Street itself can handle it. Although as it is right now, when somebody parks on Hill Street, and they do every day, that road becomes very narrow if 2 cars are trying to go through at the same time in opposite directions. So as long as we've got that type of parking allowed on Hill Street, it can create more problems as you have more traffic. So I think that needs to be looked at. Other than that, as I said, I'm in agreement with a lot of the things that Richard had already said. I think it needs to be have a second look. I am disappointed that this particular meeting is held, one, as a Zoom. It's far better to have an in-person. And two, it's unfortunate that we've got the existing council listening to this. And yes, a report will go to the new council. To me, this should have been just delayed. The public meeting should have been held with the new council. And hopefully they are all listening, besides just getting a report, because listening is far better than just reading a document. Thank you for your time. The other reason that I did do this is I know that if you're not part of this meeting, any future goings on with this, you're not going to be allowed, for example, to appeal. So that's another reason why I did it. I would hope that the council turns it down, and if the developer appeals it, that's their right. I think that there is enough issues here that it could be turned down despite this Bill 23, which is not passed yet. It should be looked at as what are the existing rules at the time of the application. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. I would hope someone will speak to the 66-foot, but I do not believe this is not a roadway going in. This is a laneway. So it would not need to be the full width of a road as far as I know. But someone will speak to that later. Do we have another one ready? Okay. Sorry, I can't read the name. Michelle? Okay, Michelle, if you would like to go ahead. I'm sorry, the name was small on the screen. So if you'd state your full name and address, please.
Hi, it's Michelle and Jim Innes, and we live at 396 Beamish. So I generally just feel that this, like I agree with everything that's been said already. And I just think it's really disrespectful to the 11 houses that surround this, this proposed new townhouse thing. It does not fit in with the character of this particular part of the neighborhood. There is development space at the north end of Beamish, north of Emery, north of Beamish Street, that is more than adequate to provide this kind of a project. And, you know, I definitely have safety concerns about the one exit in and out, one exit out in case, you know, if there was ever an emergency and we had to evacuate quickly, it would not be conducive to that. The other concern that I have is the actual parking. Like, it all looks good on the plan, but in my experience, and I've seen it in many neighborhoods, people with a garage don't always use the garage. So if every one of those houses has 2 cars, what's going to happen to all the overflow? What's going to, you know, if they're not using the garage for one of the spots? Also, you have to have so many you're supposed to have so many handicap spots in there by law, and that would again take away from the extra spots. So where would all these cars that couldn't fit in the driveways end up going? They'd clog up that laneway, and how would the fire people get in there? Or so yeah, I think, you know, it's the disruption to the forest, to all the, you know, all the wildlife, not only the birds and the animals that are there, but there's like, what about the toads? And the bat population is just starting to come back now. And, you know, to take away more of their space it's just not, it doesn't fit into this particular area of the community. And I highly doubt that any of these houses on premium wooded lots are going to be affordable housing, which is really what the provincial policy statement is about, amongst other things. So yeah, we're definitely totally not in agreement with this. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else?
Madam Mayor, no other raised, oh, there's,
Okay, someone's just raised their hand. All right, Marion, you have just raised your hand, and if you would state your full name and address, please, and go ahead.
Yes, my name is Marion Remen, and I live at 43025 Hill Street. I actually live on the other side of where this subdivision is proposed. And my question would be to ask that there be an updated traffic study, because when we bought our place in 2019 in December, none of those houses were on the landings. There was no construction there. It was a field. And so I would like to see a traffic study include all the houses that are in there, how many cars, the new one that's coming in, because about a week ago, I was trying to get out of Hill Street on my side. There were 6 cars lined up in Hill Street on the other side where this development is, and East Street was full going back and forth. Something will have to be done with that corner.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Another one. Okay, this is the phone number one. All right, this is someone with a phone number, so you're going to have to state your full name and address and then go ahead.
actually, they jumped in.
Oh, I'm sorry, they jumped in, so just a moment. I can't.
Karen Ironside.
Your worship,
Yes, Karen Ironside, if you would go ahead and state your full name and address, please.
Yes, it's Karen Ironside at 425 Beamish, and my partner Gary will be making a statement.
Thank you.
actually, my name is Gary Curtis. For the record, I live at, as Karen said, at 425 Beamish. Just a small question about hydrogeologics, specifically up at the top of the bluffs, there's maybe 5 or 6 different springs that just come bubbling out of the ground there, including 2 on Hill Street that are mere yards away from this piece of property. There's one, and then 10 or 12 feet beyond, there's another one. Both places that the municipality has tried 3 or 4 times to repair, but guess what? The water keeps on coming. The municipality is coming back, and there's always 4 or 5 inches of ice on there every winter. I haven't heard one word about geological surveys at all. Also, you could look at on your Google map right now, and you can see, I guess it might have been referred to earlier as stormwater, but Google has it down as a stream, and it comes out at the partway down that ravine. It flows almost from the very tip. Again, as it was said, it goes down through the valley, across Sieben Morgans, into a culvert, under the road, Sunset, and out into Kettle Creek. I'm also concerned, and I don't know that we'd want to take that away. Also, I'm also quite concerned about the access. I don't know that it needs 66 feet, and I'm sure Darren, the engineer, will let us know about this, but you're going to have to build. I'm past there all the time, and you're going to have to build some kind of land bridge there. You're going to have to fill in the end of the ravine. There is no other way to put a land bridge in, or you're going to have to sink pylons down into the valley and into the ravine. I don't think no one wants to do that either. And also, not saying that we would. Well, I maybe if the school buses are going to go down there, we could put school buses down to the other houses further down there that also have school-age children. But how are you going to get school buses down there? Are we going to back them up down the street? Or are we going to make them all walk over as to what happens now at Beamish and Hill? How's that going to work? I don't know. Maybe Darren can tell us next meeting. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Help me.
Kelly Horkoff.
Okay, Kelly Horkoff, you're next. You are in. If you please give your full name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Kelly Horkoff. I'm here with my wife Felicia. We live at 271 Hill Street. Or 272. We're right across the street from the proposed development. We agree wholeheartedly with everybody, what everybody has put forward tonight. I think it's way too aggressive development for the area. A couple of things that came to mind is, you know, if somebody, if it was icy down the street and they couldn't stop, they'd probably end up in our living room, which might happen a few times. Just more or less, I just think it's too aggressive for the area. I have to agree wholeheartedly with everybody else had said earlier. We had just moved here in the spring. If we knew it was going to be anything like this, then we wouldn't have moved here. And I guess the other thing is where does this stop then? Like what stops, you know, a couple other lots down the street from, you know, selling off and then another 27 units going there. That's about it. So just we're in total disagreement with it, and just want to go on the record saying that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chris, you're next. If you would state your full name and address, please.
Yep, this is Chris Clark, 380 Beamish Street. We're actually just in the process of closing on 380 Beamish, so we don't live there at the moment. My general question for the developers there was, there's a few states about how this is going to be affordable housing. The real estate market, is no surprise, has been skyrocketing over the last 2 or 3 years here during the pandemic. And the only reason it's cooled at the moment is because interest rates have gone up. Those interest rates will inevitably come back down. And I was just curious what sort of research has been put in to determine that this will be affordable housing, what the projected list prices will be at the time of completion of this, because generally speaking, Port Stanley is in a more expensive area, and I have a hard time grasping the concept that this could be made to be an affordable housing development.
Thank you, Chris. Robin, you're next. If you would state your full name and address, please.
Yes, this is Robin Palmer, and I live at 10 Lincoln's Cove. So actually not anywhere near the subdivision, but at least I access my home coming down East Road. I've lived in the Little Creek subdivision for 10 years, so you can imagine I have seen quite a lot of development, and particularly the last 3 years. My main concerns, even though they say that it's taken care of, are with the infrastructure surrounding water and sewage. We've seen, like, as I said, a huge amount of growth. And I'm concerned about, just the infrastructure, and listening to people's concerns and comments surrounding this. Traffic has become more and more a concern just coming down East Road. And as someone else previously mentioned, in any traffic studies should be revisited just based on the amount of volume that we see coming through here now, as well as just local services. Our small park is very busy most days now. We don't have sidewalks along some part of East Road, so worried about children when they miss their bus at one spot trying to get to the other spot in the mornings. And also just based on the location of this proposed building site, the impact to the environment, as well as the stability of building on the ravine does raise a lot of concerns. So I would fully support council suggesting that they build in a different spot.
Thank you, Robin. Dave, I assume it's Dave Meyer again. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. Just a follow up on that 66 foot. That was my understanding is required because you have to have access for a car to come out as well as a car going in at the same time. If it is not a requirement, it should be a requirement. And certainly Central Elgin, if they were going to go ahead and approve this, they could certainly put that into the agreement that it has to be enough width there to allow for two vehicles beside each other, regardless as to what the so-called rules are. I think that that would be a requirement. Otherwise, you're going to have a little bit of an internal traffic jam potentially, which just causes problems out on Hill Street, and also causes problems for the next door neighbor when they're trying to get out as well. So regardless as to what the law says, you should have that 66 feet, but I'll wait for the answer.
Thank you. Chris again. You need to unmute, Chris. Thank you.
Hi, it's Chris Palmer at 384 Bemis Street. My lot would back onto the proposed development as well. I don't really have anything new based on what other points have been brought up, but I just want to reiterate the fact that two-story condos do not fit with what is currently here. I think all the adjacent properties, I think there are 3 split level homes that would be considered 1.5 stories. All the other ones are single story dwellings. And when the report states that they are slightly higher, I would fight back against slightly higher 1 story or 1.5 story to 2 stories. If you were to equate that, that is double in almost all instances, not a slight increase. And 27 units is not a slight increase in density in comparison to the 10 or 9 adjacent dwellings. So those are my 2 main concerns, is the density as well as the height. I think Dave mentioned earlier that although not desirable, I certainly wouldn't, I would prefer there to be nothing back there, but a 1-story development would certainly be much better than 2 stories. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Wesley, go ahead. Can't hear you, Wesley. Go ahead and please state your full name and address. We're not able to hear you. It doesn't show that you're muted, but you're not coming through.
Can you hear me now? Okay, my name is Wesley Dorr. I live at 278 Hill Street in Port Stanley. And I would just like to be on record to say I agree with most all of the comments and concerns voiced so far this evening. And one question I have is, are we entitled to, or where do we get minutes of this meeting tonight?
Mr. Shipley?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, the recording, the entire streaming, which is the unofficial record, will remain on the municipal YouTube channel, and the municipality completes minutes afterwards.
So we'll access it, you're saying on YouTube?
If you want to hear the full meeting again, everything is on YouTube. Yes, this meeting.
And through you,
Okay,
Madam.
and will there be a Coles Notes version of minutes at all available?
Yes, yes. Mrs. Wilson is taking minutes as everyone is presenting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Is
Yep,
there-
we have one participant that's using an older version of Zoom, so I cannot allow them to talk unless I promote them to panelist.
Can you promote them to panelists and then remove them later? No.
If I remove them, they'll be totally gone.
Okay, we're going to have to remote, there's one person that is using an older version of Zoom, and so the only way they can speak is to be promoted to panelists, so that we're going to ask you, we're going to allow you to come in as a panelist, but you will have to, once you're finished speaking, you'll have to cease from speaking at all. Thank you. We'll give you a chance to come in. Yes, Dan?
Will this person be able to re-sign in if they're cut off?
No.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yes, we need your full name and address, please.
Chris Dirtle, 394 Beamish. I just want to be on the record stating that I think this is a terrible idea and I don't agree with the proposal. I think it's terrible for the environment and I think it's terrible for all the neighbors around. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Doodle. Is there anyone else? Mr. Barron? Yes, okay. Perry's back again, I believe. Go ahead, Perry, state your name and address again, though, just for the record.
This is Perry and Tammy Kodesky. We're at 390 Beamish Street. We just moved in a year ago, and this new build would actually border our property. We're just curious to know, we agree with everything that's been said tonight, in particular, the size and density of 27 units and being 2-story. A couple of questions with that kind of density, assuming that families with young children will be moving in. Where, based on the size of those, with probably a limited backyard or play space, green space for those kids to play, where would children play in this area of Beamish Hill and High Street, where there really is not any park area other than a small one on Beamish and across East Street, and public transit? When you put that kind of density in, you, especially in cities, you know that you've got public transit close by. So if people aren't driving, you can hop on. We don't have that in this small town. And that's one of the fits that I don't think really does fit with the area, is you are reliant on vehicles to get from A to B. And for me, that kind of, coming from the GTA, that kind of density doesn't make sense when you cannot access public transit. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Barry. Galen Sini, go ahead, please. Provide your full name and address.
Thank you, Your Worship. Galen Sini, 304 Hill Street. I've been living here since 2005 on property that's been in my family since the early 50s. Not wanting to put myself on record, I've already sent in my questions through email. I want to put for the record that I do not agree with this development based on safety reasons, traffic reasons, and ecological reasons. My father, John Sini, who also resides on this location, is also on this call as well. He just doesn't have access through the technology to be able to attend the meeting on his own.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monica Fox, state your full name and address, please, then go ahead.
Hi, my name's actually Sean O'Sullivan, and I'm here with my wife, Monica Fox.
Could you speak just a little louder or turn your sound up? We can just barely hear you.
My name's actually Sean O'Sullivan, and I'm here with my wife, Monica Fox. We just wanted to be on record to say that we're totally against this or opposed to it. Kind of for selfish reasons. We have a 3-year-old son who's going to be 4 in January, who loves playing on our front lawn. And as I said, we live at 274 Hill Street, so right across from the proposed build site. It feels intrusive and it feels unnecessary, especially for John and Rose Johnston, who live right beside the build site. And I don't know what it's going to take, but we've talked to multiple neighbors throughout the whole neighborhood and nobody wants this to happen. So I just hope you strongly consider what everybody's bringing to the table tonight and reconsider. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Cynthia, you're up next. Would you go ahead, state your name and address?
Cynthia Petts, 318 Hill Street. I just want to go on record to saying that we don't agree with the proposal.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay.
Andrea and Richard again, if you would please state your name and address again and go ahead.
Yes, it's Andrew and Richard Grinner at 386 Beamer Street. I'm just speaking in for Rose and John Johnson, who neighbor right directly next door to the entrance. John has been ill, and Rose asked me to speak on behalf of them today to show that their disapproval. And I forgot to mention that earlier when I gave my little talk. So I just want to make sure that they're on the record of that as well.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Yes, your worship, this is Gary Curtis again from 425 Beamish. While we're hearing talk about children playing in their front yards, I'm reminded when I talked earlier about the 2 or 3 families further to the west that I'm sure would love to have school bus service. And I did misspoke. I said that they children now go to meet the school bus at the corner of Hill and Beamish. No, they do not. The school bus does not stop there for safety reasons. It goes down to Beamish Park. So the children, all kinds of happy children from these 27 units will have to troop down. And I guess there would be several different school buses actually, right? For the different schools and for, the schools that go to St. Thomas and the ones that go here, maybe the French immersion over in Sparta. So the school bus goes to Beamish Park. So those children will have a bit of a hike, unless of course, the engineer would rather have the children cross East Road, for some sort of mega pickup, because I guess that's what maybe President Ford or Premier Ford would like. That's all.
Thank you. Regina, go ahead. State your full name and address. Whoop. There, go ahead, please state your full name and address. You need to unmute.
My name is Georgina Troxel. I'm at 268 Hill Street, 2 doors down from the proposal. I also want to go on record as I do not agree with this project for all of the above reasons, especially Richards. He did a very good job on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Pan? Sorry, go ahead. Carrie, go ahead, please. Say full name and address. We are unable to hear you, Carrie. Go ahead. For some reason, your sound is not coming through, even though you're not muted. We're still unable to hear you.
Madam Mayor, they actually have posted a comment in the chat.
Okay.
So Carrie Lewis and Wendy Pesnick, 404 Beamish Street. Richard has succinctly voiced everyone's concern regarding the development for those who live here. As the previous homeowner stated, we need an updated traffic study to be reviewed before any decision can be considered / made. We believe the increased traffic will dramatically have a negative impact in our.
Thank you very much. So, Carrie, Mr. Perrin has read your comments in the chat box. I assume you were able to hear that. It appears that's the only way you're going to be able to communicate with us. Unless you phone in, yeah. John Brenders, go ahead. Unmute, please.
Yes, I disagree with this.
You need to
building
state
that's
your full
going
name
up
and
here.
address, please.
Betty Brenders, 385 Bemis Street.
Thank you.
I very much disagree with this building. We've been living here 28 years, and that wood area is for deer and wildlife, and there's not enough room for 27 homes to go in here. We got a very nice subdivision here, and you're ruining it with putting buildings behind these people's backyards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Orkoff again.
Okay, Kelly, go ahead. Sorry, the names are very small on the screen, so I've been unable to see them. So go ahead.
Yes, Kelly Horkoff, 271 Hill Street, 272 Hill Street. Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question. They were saying that there would be no cost to homeowners. So right now we're on septic. So if they put the sewers in, do we have to pay to hook up to the sewers then? Or is that covered with the development?
You would not have to hook up to the sewers. We agreed when we put that in across the way for landings that it was strictly at your option. If you agree to hook up at some point, there is a set fee that you would pay, but you are not being forced to hook up.
But it is money that would come out of our pocket then.
If you decide in the future to hook up.
And I also heard if you denied to hook up and you had to hook up later, then it would cost you more money, that you couldn't get an interest-free loan or something like that. Is that true?
Mr. Perrin?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can speak to past precedent. So at the time that services are installed down a street, council of the day would consider a bylaw to impose any future costs. That cost is dependent on the cost to install the services divided by the number of properties that it would service. So on a price per property. And typically that charge is indexed over time based on the construction price index. So if the services were installed, let's say in the year 2000 and someone decided to hook up in the year of 2020, then that charge would be indexed for that 20 years based on the construction price index.
Right. And yet the sewers through this area went, what was
so the services for the landings development utilizes an outlet that's constructed down Larry Street, and that bylaw imposes a charge to anyone connecting to those sewers in the future, but there was no requirement for a forced hookup at the time of installation.
Right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
No more.
No more? Yeah. Did you want to speak then?
Oh, I just wanted to add something for the sewer hookup. I believe this sewer location, it's a very deep sewer, and to rip up this sewer to service the 27 unit proposal, it passes by roughly 6 or 7 houses. I'd be interested to see what the cost projection would be to service this area. I think it will be higher than a normal cost just because of the physical attributes for the area. So I think that's something that should be discussed in advance of this development.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask if any members of council had any questions. So does anyone else, any other member of council have a question concerning this development? My understanding was that the entranceway there, is it going to have to fill in some of the natural hazard land or not? That's the one question that I had. Was it just the natural heritage land where they're going to, and they said they were going to leave the natural heritage land there. So that's the only question that I had. Does anyone else have any questions? Does any member of the public have any further questions? Mr. Perrin?
I don't know if Mr. Lyle wants to speak to the question with respect to the entrance width and being able to accommodate that access.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Through you, Your Worship. Yes. Thank you, Lloyd. I guess if that's kind of the conclusion of the public comments for the time being anyway, and questions from council, I think Casey and I do have a few points that we could respond to. So I guess I'm up first, so I'll stick to kind of the more engineering related items, and then turn it over to Casey to hit a couple of the themes that we received from some of the other comments. So really in no particular order, but just starting as requested by Ms. Merton. So the entrance road, so kind of in keeping with where the existing driveway is to the site, but we've positioned the entrance road towards the east side of the site to minimize disturbance to that existing ravine feature. The existing driveway is not of sufficient width, of course, to service a 27 unit condominium site. So we're proposing the same kind of condominium cross section that we have on many other developments in Central Elgin and surrounding areas. So the proposed asphalt width for the roadway will be 6.6 meters, and then curb on each side of that for a total back-to-back curb width of 7.5 meters. Which is the same. So that supports two-way traffic comfortably, meets all building code requirements for fire access, garbage truck and everything. So that's the same as what we've built kind of kitty corner in the landings and again on other jobs in Central Elgin. So to build that, there is a shallow that does encroach by about 1.5 meters within the top end of the existing ravine feature to the west of the existing driveway. So we are proposing to fill that in so we would be shifting the existing top of the bank at approximately 6 meters to the west to accommodate the road, but then also a safe boulevard area to the west of the entrance road as we come in. That filling was studied by the geotechnical report that was submitted with the application, as well as the EIS report that was submitted with the application as well, and both concluded that there was no negative unalterable effects of doing such. Our office looked at that as well from the civil design, and basically storm drainage would be the main consideration with that, and any sewers can be adjusted and realigned to suit the adjusted top of bank in that area. So it does not need to be a 66-foot wide right of way per se, and that would not be a typical application within a condominium site. But any of the design standards that we're applying to this site would be are consistent with any other condo site that our office has ever done within the municipality. So there isn't any corners cut that way with respect to the entrance feature. A couple of the other themes, or I guess maybe one other topic on the entrance, not directly related to the subdivision, but sorry, my notes are a little bit all over the place. There is a concern raised about seepage into that ravine and then erosion within that area as well. So there is a number of areas of erosion that are caused from surface water draining from Hill Street that discharge to various locations along that ravine. Basically, there's kind of an informal series of tiles that outlet to at various locations down that bank. So we've worked with municipality of Central Elgin staff, and it is all kind of pre-designed concepts at this stage, because we're just at the planning stage, not on the detailed site plan. But we've worked with municipality of Central Elgin staff and have came up with a solution to collect and reroute those surface drains to a combined storm sewer discharge at the top end of the ravine here that should help to alleviate those existing areas that were noted. The geotech report that was submitted did include test pits, 3 different test pits that were advanced past the foundation depths and past the servicing depth within the site, which would be a typical practice for any job that we work on to advance that. So the geotech component was, met all of the standard requirements for this project, and did include a slope stability analysis as well to the west. Traffic was probably another common theme that was brought up. The report that was completed by Frank Berry was specifically tailored to this development. A couple of years previous to this, I believe it was in 2019. Lloyd, correct me if I'm wrong. 2018, sorry. The municipality of Central Elgin retained Dylan to kind of do a master traffic plan of this area of Port Stanley that was partially driven by the construction of the new fire station, if I'm remembering correctly. But so that study completed by Dylan did include traffic projections for all undeveloped land within the area. So at that time, there were still some lots within Sunset Bluffs to be built out. The lands to the north of Sunset Bluffs were assigned population projections, as well as Domus's land to the south, and then other infill spots surrounding. So although the houses weren't physically constructed at time of at the date of that report, traffic projections were all accounted for, and I guess I would suggest that that's fairly typical for a traffic report to include projections, because you need to anticipate road improvements and everything rather than react to them when the houses are all built. So I would say that was a fairly standard approach on that as well, and the traffic report would be considered current. And I think maybe one more thing for me, and I'll turn it over to Casey. There was some comments on the supporting reports that were submitted with the applications, specifically the environmental stuff. So there was an issue scoping report, which is kind of a synonym for a scope EIS submitted with the planning applications. That report studied the natural features of the site and the surrounding area, and ticked off all the standard boxes. There was comment about bat survey and all of the requirements that were that had to be done were completed by our consultant. So the study again concluded there was no negative or unalterable impacts that this site would cause to the surrounding area. The lands are designated for residential development. So kind of in the hierarchy of planning documentation, we do have official plan designation to support the proposed use. As part of the detailed site plan design, when we get into the detailed grading and servicing, there will be a tree preservation plan that will be completed that will look at in detail at the boundary trees. And there was a comment raised about hazard trees as well. So that would be the appropriate time to consider that in detail. And certainly we're all on the same page, and we don't want to create an unsafe site here from a hazard tree perspective. So I think those were kind of the few maybe topics that I didn't already kind of touch on in my preamble there, and I'll turn it over to Casey to finish up here. So thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Casey.
Thanks, Darren. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few things to add. Darren covered off most of the themes and the comments that we heard, but a couple of things for me to touch on. Just with regards to the affordability comments, there's still, under the assumption that this does move forward, there's still a lot of work to be completed with regards to site plan approval, building permits, and actual physical construction. It's premature to even ballpark an estimate for what these units would go on the market for. When we get closer, again, under the assumption that we proceed through to construction, cost of these units wouldn't be known until closer to the building permit process, when the current market rates and including construction costs would be known. And as the market is volatile with regards to inflation and rising interest rates, it makes it even more difficult to kind of place a point of sale on these units at this time. There were a couple of comments just with regards to school busing. You know, unfortunately, school busing is outside of our control. The school boards set their mapping and their routes based on roadways and population projections. So with regards to where children from the existing developments around us and the proposed development are, it would be up to the school board to determine if a relocation of a bus stop is warranted at that time that any proposed development would come online. And then just to kind of echo some of Darren's comments, you know, these lands are designated for residential development under the Central Elgin official plan. So typically what you see is the official plan will provide policy framework and land use designations for all parcels of lands within their jurisdiction. And then the zoning bylaw implements those land use designations. In this situation, we have a disconnect where the current zoning does not implement the planned function of these lands being residential. And as per the Planning Act, as the implementing document, the zoning bylaw should be implementing the official plan as per land use designation. So in this situation, these lands would be warranted for a zoning bylaw amendment in order to facilitate a form of residential development on these lands. With regard, I believe that, and then Darren covered off the 66-foot, he clarified the 60-foot access connection. So I don't have any additional comments that I think need to be addressed, but Darren and I are still here, and if members of council want to throw anything else at us.
Thank you. Do any members of council have any further questions for them? Yeah, Mr. Perrin, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, there are a couple of comments in the chat feature of the meeting. We don't typically address those, but they are from the individuals that we read before that were having trouble communicating. So Carrie writes, if this development moves forward, we completely support that the structures be limited to one-story dwellings for all the privacy reasons voiced. Then a question, will the infrastructure in place handle the increased waste in the sewer system and with the additional proposed development? That's been asked a couple of times. In fairness, the municipality should speak to that. And yes, there's adequate servicing capacity in water and wastewater systems, both for treatment and conveyance. And then there is another question from Mr. Gruner that if he wanted to ask that in person, then he can do that.
Okay, you're going to put Mr. Gruner.
There's a few here. So
okay. Okay, Wesley Dorr is first. If you have a question, go ahead.
Yes, I do have a question, I believe, for Mr. Lyle. You spoke to filling in the ravine. Now, that would be south of the proposed development property. And by looking at the municipal mapping, I don't believe that the applicants, the residents of 279 Hill Street, own that portion of the ravine. And I believe Casey Siebemorgan owns most of that ravine. However, his property only comes up so far. And you're talking of filling in between 1 and 2 meters of the ravine. So the portion of the ravine that is to be filled in and banked properly, who actually owns that property?
Mr. Perrin, can answer that. Go ahead.
I'll speak to it. So the entire frontage of this development fronts onto municipal road allowance known as Hill Street. So in order to access the development, it would be like any other proposed development where the municipality would give approval to access the municipal road allowance. Sometimes when there's access provided by the municipality to access the municipal road allowance, there is work that has to be accomplished or undertaken to provide that access. For example, putting in a driveway culvert on a normal residential driveway on a rural cross-section road, or to install a curb cut for a residential street in an urban area, or in this case, filling in a portion of the ravine. And from the municipality's perspective, we ask that due diligence be done to have the required undertaking or the required engineering studies to facilitate that type of work. One of which is a geotechnical study.
Right, and obviously we want a safe entrance, period.
And at the end of the day, it's going to be on the municipal road allowance, so we want it constructed properly.
Yes.
Okay, so if I have this properly understood here, Mr. Perrin, the municipality of Central Elgin actually owns that section of ravine, even though it's only a couple meters, which is designated as heritage land, I believe. Is that correct? That Central Elgin actually owns that property?
It is correct that the municipality owns that property, yes.
Okay, so Central Elgin is basically giving this property to the developers or selling it? Or how does that actually work?
No, the ownership remains in the ownership of the municipality of Central Elgin, like every other access. So for example, Mr. Dorr, your driveway crosses the municipality's property, the road allowance on Beamish Street. The municipality still retains ownership. However, you are given approval to access your property through a driveway, the same way as this access would be provided through site plan control.
Okay. I think I understand that now. Not that I agree with it, but I understand it. Thank you.
And then the other question that you had was, do the lands that the municipality owns that will be accessed or provide access to the site, are they designated as natural heritage or natural hazard? And that's no. The access will be on lands that are already currently designated for residential purposes within the municipality's official plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from? Okay, there are more. Go ahead. Chris, go ahead with your question.
Yes, my question is for Casey.
Name and address, sorry.
Sorry.
I still need your name and
Chris.
address it's so that Mrs. Wilson can keep records properly.
Yeah, no problem. Chris Clark, I'm closing on 380 Beamish here in the next couple of weeks. My question is for Casey. He had mentioned that there was no rough appraisals on the properties currently for the 27 units. That comes at a bit of a surprise to me because I would expect that the developer would have done some sort of a cash flow analysis or a net present value to determine if this was going to be even a profitable project before going into it. So I have to believe that there is some sort of justification and evidence that you've provided for to justify this house is in fact affordable or projected to be affordable at the very least. Thank you.
Casey, or do you wish to speak to that?
Through you, your worship, I am not a professional land appraiser, so it's difficult for me to kind of provide additional commentary over my initial comments. From a purely land use perspective under the Planning Act, price points of units do not factor into land use planning decisions, and our decisions around land use planning, particularly in front of members of council, or if this were to be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Financial gain or loss through sale of units is not a form of evidence for land use planners to rely on. So I can't provide any sort of additional commentary than what my original statement said.
Thank you, Casey. Andrea and Richard, go ahead, state your name and address again, and then ask your question.
Thank you. It's Richard Gruner, 386 Beamish Street. Just a couple comments, and I know on the affordability, that question's come up a few times. I know in the proposal, it states in black and white, basically, that these are not going to be affordable homes. So they're just going to be luxury homes along the ravine, and that's in the proposal, and I believe in the justification report as well. Quick question in regards to 275 Hill Street, the one that's right next door at that entrance. You say that the entrance is going to be pushed as far east as possible. And I believe that was Darren that was saying that, if I remember right. And that's like their property is already abutting. There's a cedar hedge there, and that's about it. That separates the two driveways. And if that gets extended down to Hill Street, them leaving their driveway will be next to impossible, because it'll be a blind corner. And people coming out, that will be a blind corner. If it's left open or just a curb, people are going to round that curb, and that's going to have such a detrimental effect on 275 Hill Street of them getting in and out of their area, as well as impacting their property of how that looks. So I think that needs to have a closer look, or a little bit more clarification on exactly what that looks like, and some more consultation with the planning there. And just out of sheer curiosity, if all of our voices are not heard and this does go through, what is your anticipated finish date?
I'm sorry, I missed the end of the last question. What's your anticipated
Finished date.
finish date? Sorry. Casey or Darren, who would like to respond?
With regards to the anticipated finish date, taking a high level approach under the assumption that council proceeds with an approval and there's no appeal required. A site plan process on a development of this scale, I would anticipate taking 4 to 6 months ideally. I'm always optimistic, and chances are it'll probably go a little bit beyond that 6-month window, but and that would be followed up with another 2 to 3 month building permit process before we could even be looking at getting shovels in the ground. So, we're at best case scenario, perfect world, we're probably looking at late summer to get shovels in the ground with regards to this proposed development, and probably occupancy early 2024. And that's, and again, this is high level, hoping that the stars align and that there's no hiccups along the way.
Thank you. Dave, go ahead.
Getting back to the pushing the road to the east, I didn't hear a response to that. What is the legal requirement to have a distance between an existing driveway and an access road? And I know we're saying access, but to me, it's still a road. An emergency vehicle still has to be able to turn right into there. Knowing the size of our vehicles, that's going to be tough, because the road leans to the left, and then you'll be leaning left and turning right. You need a larger space there, in my mind, to actually have proper access in there without driving across someone else's property. So just how far are you pushing it? And I know you're talking meters. I'm still of the old school. Tell me how many feet that road actually is. I'm getting like maybe 22 feet.
23. Go ahead.
Through you, your worship, excuse me. So getting into kind of the nitty gritty details here for planning application stage, but so the east limit of the curb, so the closest part of the curb at the entrance next to 275 Hill Street is currently proposed to be about 4 meters from that property line, which is just shy of 13 feet. I will kind of reiterate that there's ample space to construct a proper intersection here with proper sight lines, proper turning radiuses for emergency vehicles and garbage collection and you name it into the site without crossing the private property, and far from it, crossing the private property of 275 Hill Street or any other property for that matter. Dave to convert a couple more of the dimensions for you. I had previously stated that the proposed asphalt width would be about 6.6 meters wide, which is just shy of 22 feet. And again, that's been the standard that we've applied on past projects within Central Elgin and would intend on doing so here as well.
Thank you. Galen, go ahead and state your name and address again, and then ask your question, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Gail Ancini, 304 Hill Street. Just a quick question, because I'm not sure if I understand this or not. When they're building that proposed area to build in the driveway, obviously on that bend you can only get one car through there at a time. How much time are we going to be impacted at this end of Hill Street for getting in and out, access to our own homes, as well as if an emergency does arise, getting emergency services in and out, etc.? Is there going to be an impact based on the need for them to gain access way, build up the ravine, put in their driveway, etc.?
Go ahead, Mr. Barron.
Through you, Madam Mayor, at the time of construction, there will be a requirement to have one lane of traffic open on Hill Street. Only
one lane now. There's only one lane now.
Correct. So they will be required to take and maintain traffic flow. We would not permit, those be cut off in order to service this development. As Mr. Marr stated earlier, the municipality owns a 66-foot right-of-way. So we will ensure that there's adequate traffic flow to the properties to the west during the time of construction.
Thank you.
Can I ask how?
Just a second. I'll have to put them back in.
Okay. Mr. Barron's letting you back in.
Okay.
Go ahead, ask your other question.
Go ahead, Dad.
How many members of council are going to be affected themselves by this type of development? They are making decisions affecting my life.
This current council aren't making any decisions
That's right.
whatsoever.
That's right. That's why you're not in there still.
You need to be polite and respectful as we asked.
This is Gary Curtis again at 425 Beamish. Intrigued about, I never used the word erosion, but it came up after I talked. I talked about all the springs and the creek that comes out there, and Darren, the engineer, was talking about all the tie-ins that were necessary, and we have preliminary talks with our Central Elgin engineers, and we don't know exactly what we're going to do there, but we know it's going to be something. I haven't heard any talk about the retaining wall that is along the southern edge of Hill Street, directly to the west of this. I assume it's there to stop a cave-in from all the water that's there. Cave-in, I guess, is a major form of erosion. The erosion, if you want to look at it, goes right up to beside the proponent's driveway. In fact, I live in there and I walk my dog past there several times a day. I think a storm or two could go put it right underneath. The erosion comes right up to the driveway. Then you have a narrow driveway, and then you have narrow strip of grass. Then you got that cedar hedge, and then you have the property next door. You're going to have sight lines and room for people to do wide California turns. Where are you going to get that kind of land there? And what is essentially a one-lane road? Is pardon me, in a rush of development, we're not going to be talking expropriation, are we? Because there's not the land here for this. Just look at it. There's just not the land. I'm done.
Mr. Barron, no. Go ahead.
So, Madam Mayor, through you, the concern that's being raised is a matter with respect to site plan control. And in order to, and this is a planning approval process this evening. The concerns that are being raised with respect to erosion and the ability to fill in the gully or the ravine to accommodate the access, that will all be supported by professional engineers licensed in the province of Ontario, both from a geotechnical standpoint, that will support the actual structural design of the entrance to the development. We've already vetted those studies as staff and have no concerns with what is being proposed from a design standpoint.
You can't say that.
No, I can say that right now
Yes.
because I'm off the clock.
Is there anyone else, Mr. Barron?
No.
That's it? Well, all the members have asked the questions that they wished. If so, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson. That's dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. Thank you.